So what's happening here this morning is we're just getting blizzard after blizzard coming through, and in between it's just glorious. But what that's doing is it's creating this really dynamic, changing environment. And the difference between what I'm looking at now and what I was looking at before are just outrageous. In that, with the shots that I was taking a couple of moments ago with the blizzard there, the snow in front of the trees, it's kind of similar to what I was doing before Christmas there, where you're kind of abstracting the scene with all this motion and all this energy. Now with this beautiful light, we're getting side light, the birches are standing out against the larch, and it's the whole scene is just completely different. And if I just quickly recreate where I was a few moments ago and have a look at how that's changed, it's just absurd how we've got this stunning light now. And it is about luminosity and contrast and the way the colour and the textures are all changing. But with that snow coming through, it really adds this incredibly dynamic element. And I think this is what is so engaging about this type of weather for us, is the world looks normal a lot of the time, and some, like I did earlier with the shallow depth of field, that is a way of manipulating reality to create atmosphere when it doesn't exist natively, I suppose. We're using the physics of the lens to change how the reality appears. But then when we do have fog and atmosphere and snow and flowing dynamic energy, then of course we can use that to best effect as well. So I think that's the learning point of this video, is that when we have dynamic atmospheric elements, fantastic, but the absence of them doesn't mean we can't make atmospheric photographs. We just have to use different mechanisms. As I mentioned before, we had pulses of light coming through where we would get the storm would come in, we would get this beautiful amount of snow falling, and then the next minute would be a blue sky and clear sunny conditions with lots of contrast. And you can see this is the same tree, slightly different composition, but more or less the same tree, taken 5 minutes apart. And I think this is the beauty of photographing in dynamic weather, is from every second it's changing. The way the snow is blowing around, the direction of the wind, how the snow is falling through the frame, it changes, and that aesthetic is so different. And this is why there's no perfect photograph out there. There's just moments where we notice, and I love that. You know, the image on the right, you know, I'm not mad on it particularly. I took it to illustrate the difference between the atmospheric scene and the this kind of higher contrast scene, and I think that's exhibited quite well here. I think we can see that the subject matter is the same, but the feel is very, very different. And I think this really emphasizes what I was saying earlier, which is it's not the content, it's not the subject that is the point of photography. It's the feel of the aesthetic and how you react to it, and the emotions and the metaphors and the vision that you can see in that scene out there. Landscape photography is amazing. It can be so powerful for us, and we manage to ruin it on a regular basis. We started off with very shallow depth of field with that single birch branch with the snow there, and the shallow depth of field allowed us to create a lot of atmosphere. And I've brought up these two photographs as a final example of a similar technique, where shooting with a 400mm or a long lens with its widest aperture, you create quite a shallow depth of field. And that bokeh, that blurriness in the background, is an atmospheric element.
when we think about the photographs in the previous scene there with the snow and the birch and the larch, they were very, everything seemed to be on one plane. The long lens was compressing it all into a kind of a tapestry of detail, whereas these have a sense of difference about them. The image on the left is a single birch with another birch trunk in front of it. There's a colour shift, there's cool to warm transitions. This photograph is very much about the solidity of that beautiful silver birch trunk. On the right hand side here, this is the same silver birch trunk. You can even, it's definitely the same tree that I was photographing. But you can see the difference here with that very shallow depth of field, allowing the branch that's going out into the background there to feel almost like, it reminds me of illustrations of neurons in the brain, how you get these branching structures going out into something else. And I always look at landscapes from a sense of my own inner landscape and that feeling of projecting metaphors onto the landscape. These are just trees at the end of the day. Now, I'm fascinated by trees and I think they're wonderful things. Some of my best friends are trees, but they are just trees. They don't have stories to tell. Even the oldest and wisest don't have stories to tell. You know, we don't live with Ents. That is in our imagination. That's our projection. So at the end of the day, these trees are just somehow mirroring my own inner landscape. And as I've intimated in this video already, I did get myself into one heck of a funk by having this expectation of I've got to stand here or sit here in my office talking to you folk, thinking about education, thinking about photography, thinking about expression, thinking about creativity, and trying to teach all of these things when we're human. You know, and as soon as you accept that you're human, we know we have weakness and failure and expectation and all of this different stuff. So at the end of the day, we get worried when we have to make a presentation to thousands of people every week. How is this going to be received? So for me, it's very difficult somehow to detach from that expectation and just make photographs of how I feel. But somehow innately, I still make photographs of how I feel. Popularity isn't an issue. You know, people are going to scroll past these on Insta. But for people who are prepared to invest the time, we can dig into photographs like this and learn more, not about birch trees, but about ourselves. And I think that's a hugely important lesson.
So I'm going to be honest with you, one of the things I really dislike about making videos for YouTube is coming out with some expectation, and I always do it and it always makes me cross. And there's no better guarantee for me to not feel good about being in the landscape than to come out with an idea of I'm going to go out and make a video. So this is a catch-22 situation here. So what we're doing is we came out thinking about shallow depth of field and making photographs of birch trees and things like that, because we walk this path so often. And I just got more and more frustrated, you know, making shots that I kind of liked, but, you know, feeling that I need to be making something that's acceptable for you guys to like and all that type of stuff. So just expectation. And I'm sure many of you feel exactly the same when you pack up your kit to come out into the landscape at a weekend is, oh, this is the one day of the week I get to go out and make photographs and I want to make good photographs. And then when it doesn't happen, we get frustrated. And all of a sudden we ruin the thing we're out here to enjoy the most. So ironically, the thing I've kind of focused back on now is a bit of water here. And what's happening is that the reflections of the trees here are creating quite an ominous and intimidating feel type of photograph. And they somehow reflect my mood. And I'm never happier in the landscape than when I'm making photographs that reflect my mood, even if that mood is a dark one. I've made so many images over the years that are dark and quite sinister and moody and verging on depressing, I suppose. But at the end of the day, that's what the landscape is for me. It is my escape from expectation. It is my escape from making images to please other people, to justify my existence. And I just want to point my camera at things that reflect my mood. So ironically, that's what I'm always going to revert back to, and we've seen this a couple of times in other videos this year, where I've gone out with this sense of expectation, and for some reason I always get in this funk of it not working, or I just get a bit frustrated. So from now on this channel, we're going to be making photographs of things that I want to point my camera at, and yeah, so let's come along for the ride and start being expressive photographers in the truest sense of the word, which is the landscape is somewhere to escape into. It's not somewhere to come and harvest anything other than experiences and a deep, meaningful respect for the environment and the landscape that we live in. So I am going to just point my camera at things that I love and make photographs that I love, and that is what I do. So yeah, hopefully you're gonna like that stuff. I'm just normal. I'm the same as everybody else.
I'll finish off here just with these reflected, the water reflections of the trees. I had got myself into a huge funk and was really frustrated. I was just pointing my camera at things and feeling very, very angry about the whole situation. And this was a cusp, this was a transitional moment for me where I thought, right, why am I doing this? Why am I trying to impress anybody with photographs when that's not really why I'm here? I'm here because I love the landscape. I watch this river just about every day of the year. I walk up it and see dippers fishing in it and grey wagtails and butterflies in the summer flitting around, and the way the trees lean over it and come into bud, and the leaves, and then the autumn colours. I know this stretch of river intimately, and somehow, ironically, this photograph totally embraces the mood that I was in, but at the same time, in this very simple processing, I've tried to make it optimistic. I've tried to make it light and airy and hopeful rather than dark and sinister. It's very diffused, it's very abstract, and again, it's not about making beautiful photographs, it's about being in the landscape, engaging with the place, and then producing aesthetics that are emotional aesthetics. The best art in the world is abstract. That's a big, bold statement, and I'll probably get lynched for it, but my personal preference is for abstract art, because it's not about the subject, it's about the emotion that subject is conveying in you. I appreciate this is a kind of a mixed bag this week. Next week's video we recorded immediately after this, and my mood was very different because I'd gone through my defunking process, and the images that I started to make were far more intuitive, far more natural, far more flowing. The conditions changed. We got into another part of the glen, and it kind of opens up and everything becomes a lot brighter and a lot airier. One thing that's really worth mentioning before we finish off here, though, is shallow depth of field is an excellent way to deal with chaotic environments. It simplifies things immensely by taking huge amounts of it out of the equation. We start to abstract the world by just blurring huge amounts of it. So it's a massively important thing. And I'll be touching on that very much in next week's video as well. I personally quite like some of these photographs. Like I said in the members video, I looked at 6 of the photographs that I made on this day and discussed the emotional genesis of it, and how important it is to find our inner landscape out there in the world. So again, please consider joining the membership there, the upper tier, the Expressive Photographers. We produce a video every week for the channel, and we really put a huge amount of focus into putting as much education into that as possible for the people who are paying us a monthly amount to help run our business. Talking of helping us run our business, if you haven't invested in the Dodge and Burn Masterclass, I'm sure you will find that an immensely valuable course. 7 hours of content, competitively priced, I feel, and the feedback has been immense. People are talking about it being a game-changing course, how it's allowing them to free up an awful lot of their creativity by getting rid of a lot of the technical side of processing. So thank you very much for your support. Thank you very much for watching. Give us a thumbs up. Dive into the comments. I haven't been getting to answer many of them recently because I've been making a lot of presentations for out of Chicago, and I'm doing a big presentation next weekend also for the Explore Light with Peter Gordon and over there in Ireland. So thank you for anyone who's signed up for that one-day workshop. I'm really excited about that too. Enough rambling from me. Have a lovely weekend wherever you are. I hope you're well and safe, and looking forward to hopefully getting some travelling in soon as the pandemic hopefully starts to ease off. Thanks for watching. Tune in again next week. Bye for now.